Welcome to Outlook Video. I'm Gabrielle Antolovich. Outlook Video has been around for over 32, 33 years. It is the most fabulous and award-winning television show for the LGBTQ plus community. And today we have Anjali Rimi, who is the president of Parivar, a wonderful organization who just had a fantastic event. Welcome, Anjali.
Thank you, Gabriel. It's an honor and pleasure to be on your show and talk to you. I'm Anjali Rimi, pronouns she, her, they, them.
Yeehaw. So tell me about Parivar.
Parivar means family in Hindi and a few other languages. And that is literally what we aim for and have built at Parivar. We are a California-based organization with a global mindset, with a single mission of building a community of love, light, and acceptance. We powerfully welcome queer, trans, LGBT folks within the South Asian diaspora and beyond, and unapologetically uplift trans, hijra, kinner lives beyond cisness, fighting for their economic justice, healthcare equity, and social inclusion.
So you mentioned that you are emphasizing the transgender community. Tell me about why that is so important to you.
As a trans woman, for me, this journey is very important because I do not want to remain being an exception to the South Asian transgender narrative. I am one of the few who were able to access education and have awareness to going through my gender journey, hormones or whatever. And what makes it even more difficult is that in a space like America or anywhere, it's important to understand that South Asians are a minority. And then when you start layering on top of that, the gender diversity within that diaspora, then we are further marginalized, further isolated. So this work is very important because we are starting with centering the most marginalized, as with many communities, the transgender folks. And that is why the work we do at Parivar is literally saving lives.
So can you tell me some of the things you're doing to save trans lives?
Well, we've been very fortunate to have the support of many, many well-wishers who understand and who believe in our work because we are trans-led, trans-centering. Our communities are in thousands across the globe. Our work has been across our three pillars of global disaster relief, advocacy through arts, and community building. Over the last 4 years that we have existed, we have helped over 100,000 trans hijra kinner folks in India, Guyana, and right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have led the global disaster relief pillar powerfully with co-chairing and bringing together structure to the largest LGBT COVID relief coalition in the country, known as the SF Bay Area LGBT COVID Relief Coalition. We supported over 900 trans folks in phase 1, and we just opened phase 2 for helping our trans LGBT folks rebuild their lives. The other work that we've done has been in India with SETAL, which is Save Indian Trans All India Lives, is the largest grassroots effort led by trans people. That is just unheard of. We have our own struggles, and yet we stand as leaders to save our own. We have 44 SETAL warriors that have worked in a country that has 1.3 billion people and has helped us do relief and recovery. And now we are doing rehabilitation and rebuilding by helping folks have their own businesses and have sustainable livelihoods. We've held many events for advocacy through arts, and we continue to welcome folks at an individual level that are looking for community and acceptance.
So for you, in particular, what kind of projects have you actually done that make you feel hardened? Besides being president of Parivar, I'm sure there's been some favorite projects.
I would say my most favorite, or I would say the one that I take most seriously, is the work we do in India, because I am from that country and I ran from there about 2 decades over ago. And I rebuilt my life in a foreign land and still trying to keep the entirety of my identity together. So that work is so important to me because firsthand I realized that while trans, hijra, kinner folks are already neglected, the pandemic relegated them to far worse situation. So me as a leader stepping up, inspiring people thousands of miles away in different parts of the world to show up for our community and to show them that we have built a grassroots network that was led by me to help these folks, help my folks, is what I'm really find gratifying in this work. But I have so many stories to tell you where I feel very proud of, being able to lead and say that, it's beautiful. Like in 2019, before the pandemic, we held the first ever, we held a South Asian Pride party that was probably the largest attended by South Asian folks. There were like over 300 people there in San Francisco. And there were so many non-binary and trans folks that we took over the space, pushing out cisness. So I think there's many, but I couldn't obviously do it alone. There's many who support me.
Wow. Um, so tell us a story about what you've been able to do in India.
Well, as I mentioned, in India, the word trans, you've heard me say a few times, trans, hijra, kinner, koti, but actually there's 16 known distinct identities of gender fluidity, none of which translates to trans. We have
Oh,
to step back and understand that transgender identities within the South Asian diaspora are an integral part of culture. That culture could be driven by religion, could be driven by nationality, could be driven by regionalism, could be driven by language, could be driven by livelihood. So when we are talking about doing work in India, you have to understand that it's beyond the alphabet, rainbow alphabet soup of LGBTQIA++. You are talking about so many permutations and combinations of gender identities. So when Parivar, which is a very grassroots organization led by South Asian folks, trans folks, had to step up in India, we had to understand that the infrastructure of how we get to those folks was going to be almost impossible because they're either isolated, being told to stay in their groups because they are kind of deemed as super spreaders during the pandemic, or a nuisance in some cases, or isolated because they live in remote spaces that are literally 9 to 10 hours from the nearest store or the railway station. And so we had to take on the responsibility of building a network where we trusted our own, we entrusted our leaders in the community to carry forward the mission we had. So I still vividly remember I got a phone call from one of our remarkable leaders on March 24th. Akka, which means sister in South Indian language, Telugu or Tamil, she said, our people are dying. And we started that day with four organizations, about 15 communities. We said, let's start with getting them food kits and water. I mean, while the whole world struggled with the pandemic, our people didn't even have food to eat. They were starving because what they're relegated to typically is sex work and begging on the trains.
Hi guys, I'm Christian Chavez and you're watching Outlook Video.
they were starving because, what they're relegated to typically is sex work and begging on the trains or giving people blessings outside temples and such. So when we stepped up, we had to really understand all of those complexities, and we had to bring in partners who had already the footprint or had access to resources in the country. And to convince them to say we are human beings as well was a paramount task that I took on, having meetings in the middle of the night because we are in different time zones, and we were able to actually reach more than half of the country, which is unheard of.
That's
Having food drives, having medical camps, having makeshift shelters so people could get isolated and quarantined. And then we realized that our work wasn't done there. We had to make this CETL, which was a reactive initiative, to a strategic initiative and say, now we got to fight for equity, healthcare equity, vaccine access. So we held massive vaccination camps to get our folks vaccinated and educate them to say that the vaccines are not going to interfere with their HIV medication or anything else. And then we realized that folks were not still being able to go back to where they were doing the begging or sex work, survival sex work or anything. So we started helping folks with seed money to start their own businesses, own livelihood projects. So we went with about 20 projects across the country, and so proud to say that, with all the turnover and such, we have about 18 projects from sewing to cooking to hotel to restaurant and beauty parlor, drinking water plant, that are really showcasing trans people to be very capable, contributing individuals of society. And so this program continues. We are building back healthcare plans around having teleconsulting for counseling for mental therapists, to actually starting to work on building a full-fledged shelter, because emergency trans affirming health services are almost non-existent in India.
so. How did you communicate with people in India? Where did you start? I mean, did you use Zoom? Did you call people? Did you email? Did you go there? I mean, how did you do this?
So we should back a bit and say that, I transitioned in America, in North America, Canada, but I never forgot my roots, which was in India. So I always had a network of community that, way before the pandemic was very much my Parivar, my family. And, those folks really helped me get connected. And we were very much relevant. Even before Parivar, I was in community and helping folks see. But I never went to India much, before the pandemic. And we had almost like, that sample survey system where you do it and you share with two more people. That's what happened with CETL. It was an infectious movement that went from one city, one village to another city, another village, one community to another community, and kind of spread from the whole country. But I will say it took many, many days and nights of no sleep and, deliberations, arguments, pulling resources together, convincing funders. So it was Zoom, it was phone calls, it was WhatsApp, it was Signal, it was emails, it was three-way calls and four-way calls, and so many other means of discussions, Instagram, Facebook, and one of the big things that really helped amplify was an app called Clubhouse, which is like a voice social media audio platform. And we also did this in different languages. You have to realize that there are over 18 languages in India, at least. And translating all that, making sure we have all the details from every individual that's been supported. So we know that the funds and the resources and the kits are actually getting to the last mile, the last person that needs to have them.
This is an extraordinary project. I mean, how many people have joined you in America to help in India?
You might be surprised if I said to you that not many.
Oof.
But the reality is that is the truth. We have had over 14,000 individual donors who supported us, who helped us. But in contrast, let me paint this picture for you. When we chaired and led the LGBTQ COVID Relief Coalition for the San Francisco Bay Area, that happened in 2020 because our COVID was bad then, right? We had over 17 foundations and grants given by such foundations and partner organizations. When we went to India, we had 2 foundations and organizations that showed up and helped us. So every one of those $14,000, 14,000 donors gave $1 to $2 to $5,000. And let me tell you, they came from all 7 continents.
That's incredible.
But the folks who drove this from the front was primarily Parivar folks, myself and a few other board members, not all of them because everybody was going through their own difficulties. But we had very little support. But we had a responsibility to save our own. We put in our every single dollar. You know, we raised close to $300,000, which is a lot of money in India. And we put every single penny of that or paisa of that to our community in India with very little help. We did get some signal boosting. We were, you know, featured in the New York Times. We were given platforms and many, many fundraisers. Individuals held fundraisers in their high schools and their graduation parties, all virtually, right? Because we couldn't meet in person, and they raised funds. But the mammoth funding and support didn't come for us when we said we're doing work in India. They're like, oh, we only support projects in India and USA. USA and Canada, which really paints and tells you something, Gabrielle, that the global South is almost always neglected by the global North, not just in trans, not just in LGBT, but as an overall.
Yeah, that is so true. I've noticed that as well. And then there is you who are here, and many of the transgender folks that are part of Parivar or could be part of Parivar. How are you supporting the folks here in the Bay Area?
I think the Bay Area has a different level of understanding and acceptance, if I may say so, about transgender identities. So while I'm not going to paint a very rosy picture and say trans lives are safe in the Bay Area, we are at least acknowledged and seen. But the challenge is when I layer on our intersectional identity of South Asians, our identity is erased. In many South Asian spaces, I am visible as a woman. I'm hardly visible as a trans Kinner woman, either because I don't disclose because I'm not sure how they're going to react, or that they do know, but they don't want to give me that identity's prominence. So our work here has been to really educate people, the other 2 pillars of community advocacy and, you know, through arts and community building. Those have been like our focus areas here. And we also have to realize that the Bay Area is a very privileged space, especially for one of the most richest diasporas in the country, the South Asians, who are either in tech, Silicon Valley, you know, are quite well-to-do. So it's a stark contrast to that trans hijra sister of mine who's begging at the traffic light in India, to the one here who has been able to access UC Berkeley education and who's moved on to work in corporate. So we try to educate our own people to say, you know, this is the reality that you might have left behind, but your help is still needed, because none of us want to be ever associated with anything suffering, right? So even I, after transitioning for 12 years, never told anybody I was trans, lived my life as a very cis-assuming woman, because I don't want to deal with the fact that there's trauma and there's struggle and I want to help my own. But that's the kind of work we're doing. And I can tell you, Gabriel, it is extremely difficult as you saw me at that event, I break down many times because the privilege that people have here really, really erases our South Asian trans identity. Because overall, trans people are kind of seen by everybody, and the South Asian identity is lost. And within the South Asian identity, the trans identity is lost because everybody's like, oh, I got a gay friend, I got a lesbian sister, we are good. Well, the reality is trans people's journeys are in your face. And so it gets really difficult for us to exist. So I will say it's been less love and more resistance for Parivar to do our work in the Bay Area, but we keep moving forward and saving our own people. And finally, I'll just say, as you saw at the event, there's a lot of Hijra Kinner folks who are belonging to the undocumented community. So you'll never see them come out. Maybe you saw one that was courageous enough to be at this event and speak to us, and you got to hear her, but they don't have language. They are very much embedded within the South Asian community, working at a restaurant or cleaning somebody's home and just their maid. And those are the people that Parivar has connections with. I, as an individual, have been able to convince them that it's safe for them to reach out to me. And many people have been connected to me by the greater community, like, the Billy D. Frank Center, or actually some individuals on Instagram. So we do support those folks. But again, we're building a community of our South Asian queer trans family. So we have support groups, Ruburu with the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, and we continue to do events where we powerfully welcome all of the queer trans people of color, centering the South Asian folks first.
Well, you are most welcome to have a group at the Billy DeFrank Center on a regular basis. We would totally welcome that.
I'm so looking forward to renewing this conversation we had a few years ago, and the pandemic happened. So I cannot wait for us to get started on that journey. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you so much. You've been listening to Anjali Rimi, who is the president of Parivar. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Gabrielle. Thank you for the opportunity. Namaste.
We love to get mail from you. Email us at comments@outlookvideo.org.
To contact us by phone, call 408-293-3040, extension 205.
Visit our website at outlookvideo.org.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/outlookvideo.
And connect with us at facebook.com/outlookvideo.
Hi everybody, this is John Angel with Outlook Video. I'm in the middle of Palm Canyon Drive with Kim Lawson behind the camera, and we are waiting for the beginning of the 2021 Pride Parade here in Palm Springs. Got another 100.
Happy Pride, Johnny. I love you.